Hello? I'm not going to comment on the various squabbles that have been happening in Russia over the past few weeks, especially online, for a simple reason. First, I've already explained the reasons for them, partly at the last meeting of the Olitsa Pravdi Club, and partly in the Economics in Russian program that's coming out today at 3 p.m., and in my other, partly on Go Over at Moscow during the Monday broadcast. And for that reason, I see no point in this discussion. So, what needs to be said? There's a fundamentally important point. By the way, in terms of its mechanics, it's a one-to-one match with our own internal Russian squabbles. I'm talking about the infamous topic of the peace treaty that, was floated in Kyiv today. So, why? Well, first of all, because it, hmm, sort of solves the problems that Trump is facing. Trump's goal is to minimize the various problems hanging over him so he can concentrate on the main issues. The main problems are the global oil market, and that's why Venezuela is relevant, by the way. That's why Trump, well, he really doesn't want to completely abandon Venezuela. You see, I believe the situation was this: a certain group, including London, decided to drag Trump into Venezuela with all the negative consequences that would entail for him. Trump managed to fend them off, but now he's decided to use this threat, which theoretically still exists, to get what he needs from Venezuela in the oil sector. And Venezuela, in fact, is quite ready to negotiate. But in any case, we'll see soon enough. As for Palestine, that's also clear because the situation's tense. It's very possible that Trump is concerned about the situation in Southeast Asia, in Burma and other places, because China's right there. But he definitely isn't worried about Ukraine. So, in order to get rid of the Ukraine problem, it's necessary to get rid of the pro British regime in Kyiv. And that's where this huge corruption scandal came from, as if they didn't already know. And accordingly, everything else came from that as well. We should also note, by the way, and here I must refer to Professor Yevstafiev, that Kyiv has a ton of compromising material on both Trump and many figures in Russia, and this material needs to be released quickly because it's possible that in, say, 2 weeks, there will be no one left to release it. For that reason, I think that this coming week, or maybe even this weekend, is going to be very interesting. This, I repeat, is an objective situation. Nothing can be done about it. That's just how it is. And for this reason in particular, these so called peace proposals, which have been put forward, should absolutely not be taken seriously at all. They are not intended for actual implementation or genuine negotiation. Rather, they are designed specifically for the purpose of overthrowing the current ruling junta in Kyiv. By the way, I wouldn't rule out that Trump's comment about terrible sanctions against Russia was meant to give those in Kiev who can still act with some independence the confidence that Trump is on their side. I wouldn't believe it, though. But in any case, to avoid any illusions, Putin said yesterday in plain terms that when we officially receive these proposals, we will, consider them. Let me translate that into plain Russian. These proposals themselves are, of course, garbage, but in theory, we're ready to talk. And then, of course, it'll be the Russian army that decides the outcome on the battlefield. That's what Putin said. So, in other words, first, this whole story should not be seen as an issue that is closely related to us, but rather as an internal struggle taking place in the West. Now for topic two, which has been critically important in recent days. This is the topic of the company NVIDIA. Everyone was waiting for this report. Many were spreading fear, but the result is very interesting. In the end, a number of suckers got taken for a ride. That is, at first, people were scared and they took a short position, expecting a decline. As a result, NVIDIA's capitalization grew by $500 billion. Then, everyone else switched to expecting growth, and that's when NVIDIA fell on Thursday by $500 billion, and on Friday, the decline continued. Well, the suckers got fleeced, but many said that the report was actually not bad at all. And by today, an analysis from more or less independent people have already come in. I shared one of them on my Telegram channel. It's public, you can go there. The gist of it is this, that there are very large inventories, meaning the demand for chips is, well, not nearly as high as one would like. And that the money NVIDIA is receiving is actually from its own inventory funneled through third parties. You see, they gave it to someone, and that someone then bought the chips. And finally, there are also questions about the profitability. I won't get into the details right now because quoting numbers verbally it's very awkward. I'll say it again. Today, on my public Telegram channel, there's a link to a very high quality analysis and a very simple one at that. Meaning there are no deep dives into the essence of it, no assessments of financial flows, and so on and so forth. Just the simplest numbers. And besides that, some key players are dumping NVIDIA stock and in rather large volumes. Of course, you could say that these are just foolish people who don't understand, but in light of all the other factors, well, it gives one pause for thought. And finally, the last point. I've already talked about this, but I'll repeat it as a conclusion. The United States of America, by adopting the concept of, an energy superpower has in fact acknowledged the circumstance I spoke about at the Dartmouth conference on November 5th, 2014, that it will be impossible to restore the American economy as long as the global dollar system exists. This is a fundamental circumstance. That is, they have adopted a model that, in principle, does not presuppose the existence of the global dollar system. By the way, thanks for this goes to, as I've said before, Professor Yevstafiev, who was the first to formulate it. In this way, unlike the situation in 2014, when it seems it was still possible to restore American industry, today it's most likely impossible to restore it. It has to be built from scratch. Why? Because the collapse will be so severe that the entire infrastructure of the American economy will crumble. And that infrastructure isn't just electricity, water, and everything else, it's also the price structure. And as a result, the investment resources, which are currently based on the capitalization of financial assets, will disappear. And consequently, even if it's possible to start some kind of reindustrialization, it'll be very slow and very long. And for this reason, I certainly can't say that I have an optimistic feeling about the fate of the American economy. But they have made their decision. And for this reason, another conclusion must be drawn, a very cautious one. That is, for those who have really large dollar reserves, I suggest, well, not to panic and run for the exits. Instead, I suggest you think about what will happen to them when the United States of America begins to dismantle this very dollar system. Yeah, this will happen, well, certainly not tomorrow, but if the United States of America has chosen a strategy within which this will happen, then accordingly, you need to be at least morally prepared for it. And in conclusion, all these events that are happening, both here and in their countries, are happening faster and faster and faster. In other words, we are getting closer and closer to the breaking point of the current trends. For now, we live in a liberal society. Well, in a liberal economy. And in fact, the entire policy of our monetary authorities is a policy of keeping us in the dollar system at any cost, even at the cost of the decline of the Russian economy. Explaining to the leadership of the monetary authorities that that they are making economically wrong decisions is pointless because it's a political decision. It's almost exactly the same as the European Union making the political decision to support Ukraine, even though it's already clear to everyone that it's just throwing money into a furnace. But the resources to maintain this political model, the dollar model, which is worldwide, are becoming scarcer and scarcer. The Khazin Foundation's reviews show that China has serious problems. And from the plenum, or rather the events before it, it's also clear that they've understood a lot over there as well. And for this reason, we have encountered for the first time a situation where people have appeared, proactive people with the resources to do something, who realize that this old model has come to an end. For now, they, not in the US, not in China, not elsewhere, have no understanding of what kind of model needs to be built. We have this understanding, and they don't. Well, we just have to consider that in the European Union, they don't even understand that the old model is going to disappear. But nevertheless, right now, literally in these past few weeks, there has been a significant breakthrough. And that means that the pace of the dollar model's destruction could accelerate significantly. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.